Oh my God, you fell over. Hello. How's it going, everybody? It's freaking hot down here. Maybe a quick one, maybe a long one. Who knows? Oh my God. My sweat is sweating. So how's everybody doing? What's going on? Anything exciting happened today? Yeah, whole lot of fuckery today, right? So a couple of things. This Sunday, going to be doing a chat with Rasa and Dr. Monkeybot over on his channel. Make sure you come and check that out. Unsure of a time just yet. I think we were going to do earlier in the afternoon. Normally we chat 3:30 my time, which is Central Standard Time. But I think we were going to do a couple hours earlier because obviously on their end of things, that's later at night. And it being a Sunday and all. So just subscribe to Dr. Monkeybot's channel, hit that bell, smash that like, and we're going to talk about things like, I'm hoping that Rasa and I can talk about this. I finished this and I really liked it quite a bit. Apparently there's a hardcover coming out. What else do I have down here that we were going to talk about? Well, as usual, I'm not really set up and ready for anything here. I haven't done a ton of reading. There was a couple of other things. I just don't know what the hell I did with them. At least I think there was a couple of things. I watched a Criterion movie. I did a trade months and months ago. And he gets in Criterion movies at the place that I go to, which is at one of the malls. And really great store, really great guy. He gets in a lot of amazing stuff, but Criterion's come through his door. And he always, again, another place in town that gives really good trade value. And I picked up Blast of Silence was one of the things. I also picked up, is it Story of a Prostitute from Seijin Suzuki? So a couple of Criterions. So last night I watched Blast of Silence from the 60s. And inside it comes with a Sean Phillips little comic strip. The director who also acted in it, I want to say Alan Barron. I don't know if that's 100% right now that I'm saying it out loud. I guess he started his career as a cartoonist briefly. I did a little bit of looking into him today. I just watched the movie last night. I haven't watched the special features yet either. There's like an hour documentary with interviews, interview with him talking about the making of the film and how he got into film. Blast of Silence was his first movie. I guess I'm talking about it now a little bit. Blast of Silence was his first movie. He did a little bit of comic strips. And when I looked today, I couldn't find exactly which titles, but again, that was a pretty basic search that I did. Super grim, takes place over Christmas. It's noir. He's an assassin. Yeah, it's pretty grim. It's interesting though, because of some of it feels like it's more a movie that kind of set the blueprint for those kind of movies. There's a narration through the entire thing, kind of, it's not quite his inner thoughts, but it's like you're reading a novel. You know what I mean? Somebody talking about him, emerging from the blackness and always alone. And what are you doing here? And put your guard up and danger, you know, all these kind of things. It's interesting, but it is definitely not the happiest of movies. And the other thing with some of these movies, and again, this is partly due to my age and kind of having a sense of what's come before, it really starts to feel more and more alien watching films from that time. There's one scene where he kind of has a dinner date with this woman who he knew when he was growing up. It didn't go so great. So later on in the movie, he calls her up on the phone and she doesn't have time to talk. It's Christmas. It's like it takes place just before Christmas and goes up to New Year's, I think. And she kind of says, I can't really talk. I've got family over. Give me a call after Christmas. Give me a call after New Year's, and let's hang out. Let's talk or whatever. And just even that one simple idea, this idea that would have been it. It was just this very brief phone call, so there is no opportunity to interact, and especially highlights his kind of solitude. You know what I mean? Because he does kind of spend the whole movie trying to reach out to people in some weird way, but always drawing back and stuff. Pretty good. It was pretty good overall. You do sense its age. It had a weird mix of almost kind of, for those of you who know Something Weird Video, it had kind of a mix of that level of grade Z movie, but a little bit more art house. So it had a couple of weird mixes in it that I think worked personally, but it is interesting, that perspective now from this point and the technology that we have, thinking about some of those even minor things, which I guess at the end of the day add up to something pretty major in that kind of disjointed, what's the word I'm looking for? They're kind of, disconnected from each other really a lot, but it wasn't something that was unusual. It's just the way that life was, right? So I don't know where I'm getting with that, but make sure you drink lots of water. Other than it stood out to me. That's the only place I'm getting to with it. So yeah, so Sunday, that chat will happen on Dr. Monkeybot's channel, so check it out. The other thing to talk about briefly is what the fuck happened today, right? There was a little bit of drama. Just a little. So I guess Tom King put out something about Jay Lee and about an alternate cover and da-da-da-da-da. And then it turned out that he was totally wrong. And he contacted Jay Lee. Imagine that, actually reaching out to a human being to ask them questions. The whole thing, honestly, is a bit of a clusterfuck. I had my own thoughts on it that were sort of related to it, but not directly related to that specific party. It was just more the idea of, again, I'm really just on this kick. I mean, it's work has really picked up. There's been a lot of conversations at work. I've had a lot of great discussions with people, a lot of, as we kind of go back into the world, we go back to work in this kind of time of still trying to deal with a pandemic, but also trying to continue with our jobs and how you do that. And so lots of really good discussions with people. And I would say, just on a quick sidebar, I'm impressed quite a bit with how things are going. I'm a fairly skeptical person, and I didn't really have faith that it was going to go as well as it has been, but it has gone really well. So I'm happy that I was wrong. Thank goodness, because that's the last thing we need. Again, just in our microcosm of Manitoba here, we have had pretty good numbers. I think we're still only at 7 fatalities due to COVID. But then you keep that in mind that I think we've tested less than 20% of our population, approximately 1.3 million in Manitoba, approximately 800,000-ish, just over that in Winnipeg alone. So we haven't tested a lot of the population, and of course, with that comes a lot of potentially people affected by COVID that haven't been tallied. So when you think of the kind of world total of, what is it, over 600,000 deaths now around the globe, taking into consideration the amount of people that are being tested, chances are there's more than that. Who knows, right? You can never really fully know the numbers, which is always a little bit kind of quoting those numbers like on the nose, because there's always going to be something fluctuating. From my perspective, that fluctuation it's lower than what it actually is. I know that early on there was people talking that the numbers were probably higher because there was the potential that people were dying from something else, but because they showed COVID symptoms, they were going to be kind of filtered down that pipeline. I call bullshit on that to some degree, especially now when we're seeing these huge numbers. I think the number that's out there is probably the minimum. I think it's only higher from there. And the only reason I bring up the numbers is because of the severity of it, and because we're having conversations in our province about going into phase 4, and I don't understand that at all when we're seeing numbers spike around the globe, and we're seeing numbers spike in various places in Canada. Why the fuck would we want to open the borders and so people can travel and not have to? The big conversation was that people could come into Manitoba and they wouldn't have to quarantine the 14 days. That's since changed. There was a town hall that we were a part of, like through the phone. Many people were called about it. You could choose to sit in on it. And then there was a survey that you could fill out. I guess it was a resounding pump the fucking brakes from people that took the survey by like a large percent. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head of how many people they said participated in it. But the majority of the people were, we need to slow down. We need to stop. We need to not open the next phase here. We need to think about this. No conversations about mandatory masks in our city or in our province yet. That was a question I was hoping to put out to them, but it just didn't get down to. There was a lot of people with questions, obviously, so it didn't get down to me to be able to ask that. So participating, hearing our leadership here, listening to us to some degree, even though they're answering a lot of questions like fucking politicians, which is endlessly frustrating. It'll always be frustrating to me. There's nothing I can do about it. It is how their minds are wired. I've just got to figure out how to deal with it. And of course, the concern with everybody about, the ever popular argument of, the economy, which I understand that. I think it's horse shit. What are we talking about here? We're not talking about people that are getting sick, having a case of the shits and going back to work. We're literally talking about people dying. And at this point, again, the numbers at the very smallest level are now double, if not, they're more than doubled the annual amount of deaths just from the common flu. So we are dealing with a different beast. So I don't understand rushing into things a little bit just for the sake of that. And in doing so, sacrificing people who are in these jobs where they're more at risk, which sort of in a really fucking strange way brings me back around to what I was touching on just before I got off on this topic. And I think it's forefront in my mind these days because of that thought process going through my head, because of those things that we're facing. I'll just never understand. And I mean, people can explain it all they want. I understand their argument. What I don't understand is how it stops at that point. So again, it came up with this fucking Tom King bullshit again today. Because he called this guy out, that he turned out he was wrong about it. My question was, that's great that you called it out. What else have you done? And it sparked this big conversation that I had with a whole bunch of strangers. And to those strangers' credit, most of them were fairly reasonable. There was a couple of cunts in there for sure, but it's always going to be the way that it is. That's fine. I'm not bothered by it. I genuinely I think we need to be having more of those conversations again, like without me sitting here ranting about Amazon and Walmart, which I promise I won't do. It's still along those lines though, right? So if you're associated, my question was, you're Tom King, you have a bit of a following, you have a bit of a name. If you truly feel these things, if you truly, again, let's, for the sake of this argument, again, I'm using his name as an example because it is leading me somewhere. I don't want to use Jay Lee because it's not about Jay Lee. It's about the idea of a particular group of people, in this case, the Comicsgate, the villain of our story. It's because of those kind of ideologies and how we move forward from those things, and how I myself personally, just me, nobody else, not speaking for anybody else, I put a lot more onus on people who are in these positions like a Tom King, who has a name, has a following. Yes, he's still working for a corporation and he doesn't have a say, but I guarantee you he has more of a say than you may be led to believe. And again, like with all of these things, I try my best to put it back into kind of my small pocket of the arts world. And I've seen this kind of thing with my own eyes. There's a lot of bluffing that goes on, and there's very few people who call that bluff. So my thing for an individual in Tom King's position is I want more. Yes, okay, sure, you're calling it out. You're calling out someone who is doing some alternate cover for your book, quote unquote, very huge fucking quotes, your book. So what else did you do? That's great that you're making this grandiose statement and everybody is flocking to you going, right on, Tom, good for you. I won't buy that. I'm not going to buy that variant cover, but I'm still going to buy the book from the company who's promoting this person who, again, I understand Jay Lee potentially isn't associated with that. I get all that, but that idea of kind of having this PR move to make everybody feel better about still supporting the book while not supporting the particular cover is a bunch of horse shit. It's a bunch of fucking horse shit. So, because you're still supporting the fucking company, you're still supporting the fucking title, you're still supporting it. And it comes down to us with our money, as it always does. And I'm fine with that. And I go forward with that. You know, if you don't want to spend your money in certain areas, why the fuck would I even tell you differently? You don't spend your money where you don't want to spend your money. My thing is that the individuals in these spots where they could potentially make a bigger change and try to call their bluff, again, using him as an example, poor example, but someone like him going, you know what, either take that guy off the book, even if it's a variant cover, or I'm not doing the story and I got to go look for work elsewhere. To which everybody in the comments and everything was like, who the fuck are you to tell someone to not be able to feed their family? To which I sort of say, nobody told him to enter the fucking arts. The arts is a fucking struggle, no matter who you are. If that's his sole skill to be able to feed his family, I feel sorry for him. Yes, that's your chosen field. There is a little bit of privilege there to be able to make a living off of the arts, because a lot of people who are in the arts aren't making a living, especially when they're at necessarily they're not necessarily a technician like in my world. They're they're a little bit outside that. The other thing is, I would also call bullshit on that, because he's Tom King. He's got a bit of a name. I have a feeling, and again, I could be wrong about any of this, I have a feeling that if he did jump ship and go somewhere else, got a pretty good feeling that a lot of his fucking fans would follow him to wherever he went. But I also have a really good feeling that if an individual like that did call the corporation the man on something, I have a feeling they might fold. You know what I mean? And again, none of this is based on 100% reality. I've seen it in my own world. People call a bluff and all of a sudden the cards fold and everything happens as they will. Mind the Comics, G, Why Not Art? Thanks very much, Tony, for coming in. Just going to kind of keep on this train here for a minute. So that's kind of where it stemmed for me. And again, a lot of this stuff, like we can have all the conversations about calling out someone who wasn't actually associated potentially and all of those things. And again, those are valid conversations. But honestly, for me, those are over there, because that's not my focus with this. My focus with stuff like this is that if there's going to be things that are going to change, instead of doing what appears to me as a DC PR move of putting this out there to stir a bit of controversy, to kind of draw some more attention to your book, actually make a stand, actually do something, which is for real speaking up. Well, what do you expect? He's only one guy. He's just got to make a living. Yeah, and that's what the fucking PAs and everybody associated with Harvey fucking Weinstein told themselves when they were bringing girls up to see him and he was raping them and jerking off into fucking potted plants. You know what I mean? Like, I don't buy that. I don't buy that as an excuse. I never have bought it as an excuse. I certainly don't fucking buy it as an excuse now. The thing is, if there's going to be actual for real change, it does take work. And guess what? That work potentially could have you lose your job. So if you want to take that stand and actually move into a direction of making a real change, then move the full fucking way. And if you don't, that's fine as well. But then don't go just kind of halfway and throw some shit out there. And again, like, I'm not going to sit here and quote verbatim what some of these chowderheads talked about on Twitter. But it was just utter nonsense. Again, it appeared to me to more be along the line of justifying them still being able to buy that book. Hey man, lay off the guy. He's got to make a living. What are you going to do? Are you going to, when he loses his job, are you going to feed his family? It's like, aren't we feeding his fucking family now by buying his books? Again, maybe I'm not talking about myself. I'm not the guy that's buying the books, but in general, people that are supporting Marvel and DC, aren't you feeding his family already? To which, of course, there was the, well, I guess that means we can tell, you know, like the smart ass, I guess we can tell him what to do, which also isn't the point. But I find I don't understand the gap there. And I just think that there's a bigger conversation that we need to be having that we're just not. And as usual, with a lot of things that are really important, there's all this shiny, flashy shit over here that all the goldfish are going towards and talking about and feeding on, when there's a bigger issue, you know? And again, I think it just ties into a lot of my thoughts in general, heightened by where we are right now. There's a lot of people struggling. Again, I'm only going to talk about Canada because that's where I live. There's a lot of people struggling with kind of making it day to day. We've had really good care taken of us here in this country and in our province. There's been a lot of financial assistance. There hasn't been enough, but there's been a lot more than some other places. Even in that, though, there's people that are struggling and suffering because of things like we don't have a basic living wage, you know, for a minimum wage. Nobody's having a conversation anymore about a universal basic income, which happened here in Canada right at the beginning of this. There was talk of that completely fizzled out. Again, there's all this talk about economy. So who are you sending back? You're sending the people who are the most vulnerable back to keep the systems going. The people that are at the top of the food chain, they don't have to go back and put themselves at jeopardy. They kind of have their position that's even a little cushy. I mean, again, like, and now I can talk just directly about myself. I mean, I've been able to work from home. I have gone to visit the sets last week. I went and visited everybody, on set, off set. So I was in it to some degree, but I am, even in my position, I'm in a spot where I can do certain things from home and not even have to put myself out there. I can still do a lot of work from the office, which is only a few people. I can do a lot of work from my phone here at the house. So those are the conversations where I think we need to be going. And if these things are serious issues, if racism and prejudice and all these things are issues, and again, let's just talk about comics. So if they are really things, instead of just putting out one tweet like, hey, I'm just drawing everybody's attention, don't buy this alternate cover, but still buy the book, just don't buy the cover. You know, it's like, I don't see that as the solution. If you don't support the company that is going to be doing things that you strongly disagree with, my thought is, well, then why are you supporting the company? And again, none of this is me saying that I'm not going to buy the book or anything, you know, because I'm still curious about buying the book. I'm leaning a little more towards not buying it now after what this horse's ass did, by calling this guy out and then actually talking to him after the fact, after he put out all that shit. Like, you're not going to get all that back. You're not going to, there's going to be a whole slew of people that missed that PS I was wrong, you know what I mean, who now think what they think. It's irresponsible. It's full on irresponsible, you know, and disappointing. Again, because then it also makes things even more challenging. It makes things even more challenging for those of us who want to have a better conversation, because now you're just giving fuel to the people, and you're now giving fuel to the people who want to say the SJWs, this, that, and the other thing. You know what I mean? It gives that fuel because you've actually fucking done it. You've done exactly what other groups of people, and I'm not trying to put people into camps, and I don't mean to. It's just, this is the easiest way to discuss it. It gives fuel to that, and then again, it takes away from the bigger conversation. So, I mean, you know, it seems like it doesn't need to be said, but watch who you're fucking talking about and what you're putting out there. Like, I just, you know, again, nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. And that's not what this is about either, which was another glorious comment that came from trying to have a discussion on social media. In no way, shape, or form am I perfect or anybody's perfect. People are going to make mistakes. But I think when you're in these positions, you owe it to yourself and to everybody else to hold yourself at a higher fucking standard and make sure that what you're putting out there is based on something. And again, maybe he's doing a lot of work behind the scenes where he's talking to the company. If that's the case, do it all behind the scenes. It's a risky thing, and in this instant shows that it's going to maybe hurt, maybe not. Who really cares? The idea that you're putting it out there is just damaging, right? So, and I find a lot of the times people don't put themselves at those higher standards when they're in these positions. You need to, you know. And again, it's not about being perfect. It's about owning up to your mistakes full on. That's absolutely right. But also trying your best to limit those mistakes that you're making the best you can. You know, I think this is a good instant where it was very avoidable by, instead of posting shit then calling, how about calling then posting shit, you know, or looking into it. But the dangers, the downfalls of social media, right? So I'm good, Tony. Overall, really good. You know, it's just some of these things, they get under my hat. And I mean, I'm becoming a little more, not confrontational about it, but I do find that I'm having a harder time letting things go. And that's partially due to being back at work and being in that mindset where my day is a lot of trying to have conversations with people and trying to figure out solutions and trying to help people the best I can, right? So my mind kind of is switched into that mode. So there was just a couple of things I just couldn't let it go. And then because there were so many responses, I guess, I don't know who I think that sometimes also what happens is I think that, you know, because especially our corner here of the YouTube comic world, we're pretty cut off from everything else. So sometimes I feel like that extends to the Twitter universe and the social media universe, that like, who the fuck is going to read my comment anyway? They're not, nobody, you know, nobody knows who you are, nobody, blah, 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 all these kind of things. Right. So, and that's ignorant of me because it is out there, especially when you're responding to somebody who has a bunch of followers. I was a little surprised that there was so much kind of back at me, but I mean, again, like I was in the mood for it. So I bring it on. Let's discuss it. And to be fair to some of the people, there was a couple individuals who we had a pretty decent discussion about it. We still disagreed, but at least it was a discussion. I even had one guy apologize to me about his initial response to it, which was nice. It was nice to see that can exist on there as well. Even though I do think social media is going to be the downfall of us all, it's nice to have every once in a while where you see those little pockets of, oh, okay, we can actually, there is a possibility for a conversation with a platform like this, you know. So that was nice. That's all I really had to say. I just felt like I wanted to get that off my chest and rant a little bit. Try to have bigger conversations. Try not to get sucked down into these sidelines where it's, hey, look, a castle, hey, look, a castle, hey, look, a castle. Like, fuck the castle. Let's talk about how we do everything else, you know, like, and I know that it's hard, but I just really, man, there's just so many, there's so much bigger conversations that we need to be having where these distractions, and again, we went out tonight for dinner. It's my wife's 40th birthday, so we went out for dinner with my side of the family tonight. And I was talking to my mom, who also follows a lot of politics, and one of the things that we had discussed was it's frustrating to continually, even now, still see people get their panties in a knot and just really up in arms about some tweet that Donald Trump sent out. It's like, haven't you gotten used to his horse shit at this point? Like, it's such a distraction and such a waste of energy to be focusing on that stuff. Again, the idea that there's a lot more to be discussing and pushing for, and wasting your time talking about how, he's this, that, and the other thing. It's just an absolute waste of time. If there's people that don't know what he's like at this point, thank you. No, I absolutely don't. That's actually worse for me. I appreciate it, though. I think if you're distracted by those things, it just makes it harder to have those bigger conversations, because that focus is on these things that are just nonsense. If there's people at this point who don't know his true colors, you're not going to convince them otherwise. So I think the idea to push forward is a much better conversation to be having, instead of being distracted with just kind of nonsense, So do your best. And we'll see you on Sunday for the Dr. Monkeybot Challenge with LaRasa.